Process of creating users in Oracle Fusion applications. Now before we go and understand the process itself, I'm going to show you who all can actually create the users. In a realistic Fusion applications implementation, it is either the implementation project manager or administrator who is responsible for creating the users and assigning roles to the implementation users. And in a post-production environment, it is the Oracle Identity Management or OIM administrator is the one who is responsible for creating the users and assigning the roles to them, or creating new roles and then assigning them to the users. So that's the people who are usually responsible for creating the users. You can further delegate the tasks by restricting the functions available in OIM administrator or with Fusion applications to third-party users within your organization, but these are like the super users. Now let's understand the process. To understand that, I'm going to open my slate. Okay, and the first step that has to be done is, let's assume that, so let's take, like according to the slide, it's the first person is the implementation manager. So if he is the person, then I will assume that this person would have a responsibility to create the users and assign the roles to them. So the process I just explained you is create users, and second step is assign roles to those users. Now the roles that we're talking about are predefined roles. In realistic scenarios, implementation manager would not be able to create new roles because it's a bit technical, and tasks of creating new roles are usually delegated to a OIM or Oracle Identity Management administrator. So that's how you create. So as soon as you click on this function, create users, it takes the control to OIM related forms, and even the assigned roles will take on to OIM related forms. But this function of creating users will be available in Oracle Fusion applications. Okay, now the second super user I said would be responsible for creating the users, assigning roles, or creating new roles and then assigning them to users would be an OIM or Oracle Identity Management administrator. So in this case, what would be the process? The process is similar. So first he has to create the users, and once a user is created, then he has to assign the pre-existing roles. At the same time, he's got an option which could be a third option of creating new roles and then assigning them to users. Once that gets over, now if you look at that, here I've used OIM, Oracle Identity Management. It's a separate server which will have a separate database. So the creation of users, their assignment will reside in the database of the Identity Management server. So in order for these users to get reflected in Fusion applications, you've got to run a synchronization program so that the definition of these users will also get linked into Fusion application server. So the fourth option over here is run synchronization program to synchronize between OIM and Fusion applications database. In fact, the third point over here is also you've got to run this so that the users get created, because they are also getting created in OIM, will get synchronized between OIM and Fusion Applications database. That's the process. Now that is a process of just defining the users, assigning the roles, but there is one more layer you can go, one more layer further you can go, which is you can define a security profile and then make sure that certain users will have access to certain ledgers or certain data within the forms. Not everyone can see everything. So for that, further steps can be done. So as far as security profile definition is concerned, it can be defined by a implementation manager or person who is doing the implementation. It could be a financials consultant as well. So security profile, so definition of that, and then the fifth here is assign security profile to users that you have defined here. And then further, as I said, a security profile will kind of restrict access to certain things, but not all the data. So in order for you to define further security around data roles, you've got to define potentially something like data access sets, and then go further and define rules around there. It is pretty much similar to what we used to do in Oracle eBusiness Suite, if at all you've got that background. So what I'm going to do at this stage is to quickly show you the forms, whereas in the next movie we'll go and have a look at the end-to-end process taken care by implementation manager as well as OIM administrator that I've just explained you. But I will quickly show you the forms so that you can keep this in your mind. Now I'm going to re-log in into all this. Okay, and so first of all, it's the implementation manager. Okay, and then this person, if he has got to define new users, he must go to the project, and then under financials he need to go to common application configuration for financials, and within that you can see something like define implementation users. So that is a place you define the implementation users, then assign the roles and so on. Whereas if one has to define the users or create new roles and then assign it to users, then the second option would be there as OIM administrator. So for that you've got to log in as OIM administrator. So I'm going to sign out from here. I'm going to log in as OIM administrator. So open this, and the default username is XEL sysadmin. Give the password, hit the login, and there you go. And in order to define new users, you go to administration, and here is the function you've got to use to define the new user. So create users, and within that then you can assign the details of that user and the pre-existing roles. But if you would like to create a new role, then you've got to use this function called as create role. Once that is done, then you've got to run a special program for synchronizing between IDM database, because what we are doing, everything is in IDM with Fusion Applications database. So I'm going to show you all that in the forthcoming movies of this